says preparing to live stream the webinar.
Would you like us to stop our videos while the speakers are speaking or leave them on?
I don't mind because oh, yeah, the webinar is live streaming and I can hear myself. Kat, you can go see the live stream on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm
Sorry, it's very
now.
distracting because I keep hearing myself like with a few seconds delay.
I'm gonna mute the tab, but I can see myself. I can see all of us really. So this is working out.
All right, Kat, is that working for you?
Yes, the stream is working. I just muted the tab because no.
Thank you. Yeah, you see what I mean.
It's very disturbing. It's like an echo, but really weird and really delayed. But
yeah, I think I missed someone's question during that whole thing. Oh yes, muting videos. It's up to you if you want to mute the video or not. Maybe just mute the mic would be the most important thing. Otherwise, it's up to you because I don't think people can see the video even when you're screen sharing. Yeah.
Okay, all good. And I am praying that we do not lose internet. We are in the middle of a whiteout. We cannot see across the street.
Wow, okay. Yeah, it was snowing all morning here as well, so keep our hopes up. All right. So I'm going to give a couple minutes and then we'll start. All right, so it is 1 o'clock right now, so we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on Zoom, or if you're watching the YouTube live stream, welcome. So thank you for coming to this celebration of Black History Month 2022. My name is Virginia. I am the chair of the Inclusivity and Diversity Committee at RASC. I am a member of RASC Montreal Center, and I will be your co-host for today with Catherine Dulong, another member of the Inclusivity Diversity Committee and RASC Montreal member as well, will be my wonderful co-host. So throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A chat box. Kat will be keeping an eye on that, as well as on the YouTube comment section. First off, I realize people are joining us from all over. So welcome, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land from which I am joining you today is currently known as Lamexville in Quebec, is actually the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederation. I would like to thank the countless generations of Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederacy for taking care of these beautiful lands and waters. Today, we will be celebrating Black excellence in STEM and STEM education with an all-star cast of speakers, if I may say. They will be sharing their works in the fields of astronomy, mathematics, and science education. Before we introduce our first speaker, we actually have a surprise clip for you to show you. So this is a professionally animated video, and it is based off a story written by Elizabeth Toussaint. Elizabeth Toussaint is a 7-year-old girl from the Montreal area, and she wrote and narrated the story, which I thought was very appropriate to start off this event. So I will share my screen and show you the video. Actually, before I show you the video, it is in French, and the translation from YouTube's closed captioning is pretty poor, so I'm just going to summarize the story for those of you who are not as familiar with the language. So it tells the tale of the scientific princess who goes to space. Instead of reading the books her parents give her, she uses them to make observations during her space travels. One day she arrives late to class and she finds that someone stole her pens. It turns out that the boy who took the pens took them because his parents don't have any money to buy him school supplies. She ends up essentially letting him borrow the pens, and then she gives Santa Claus all of her books so that he can give them to all the other children in the world, and then everyone is happy and enjoys looking up at the stars. So I will show you the video.
Virginia, if I can interrupt, I think you forgot to share the sound.
Oh, my bad. Let's see if I can do this properly.
It's a little checkbox at the bottom left of the share screen tab, and it's just share sound from computer.
Whoops. Let's see. Here, I'm going to unshare. Maybe that'll help. Thank you for letting me know. All right, let's try this again. Thank you, Kat. All right, so I'm going to replay. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
La princesse scientifique. Il y avait une princesse, puis elle demandait toujours au roi puis la reine, je peux aller monter dans ma chambre pour regarder mes livres. Il disait oui, mais au mieux de ça, ben, elle allait dans l'espace. Elle visitait les planètes. Elle a pris un stylo, puis elle écrivait sur sa main. Elle changeait ses livres et elle mettait du scotch pour puis qu'on les voie. Puis là, elle écrivait sur le scotch d'autres mots qu'elle avait sur sa main. Puis là, ses parents s'en sont rendus compte. Un jour, ils sont allés dans sa chambre. Elle était plus là parce qu'elle était dans l'espace. La minuterie, elle avait sonné. Puis là, vu qu'elle était loin de la Terre, elle pouvait pas entendre. Et vu qu'elle avait des bons yeux, elle voyait que son réveil, il bougeait. Puis là, elle est vite allée à l'école. Puis elle avait cassé la fenêtre de l'école. Il y avait quelqu'un qui avait volé ses stylos. Parce que le problème, c'est que le garçon, il avait pas de stylo, puis il en avait besoin. Il avait dit, est-ce que tu peux me prêter ton stylo? Non, parce que tu ne m'as pas redonné des autres. Tu les achètes pas? On n'a pas de sous. Elle avait donné une pièce. Il a dit merci, puis là, il est vite allé dans le magasin, puis là, il s'était écrit fermé dans le mois d'octobre, puis c'était déjà le mois d'octobre. Donc là, il était triste. Elle a dit, bon, je t'en donne un, mais ce soir, tu me le redonnes. Le soir de Noël, elle avait donné tous ses livres au Père Noël parce qu'il n'y avait pas beaucoup de gens qui avaient de l'information sur les planètes. Puis là, il avait donné tous ses livres au monde. Et tous les enfants avaient des livres, ils étaient très contents, puis ils regardaient toujours le ciel.
All right, so that was just a small clip by a youth member. Actually, not a member, but maybe soon. All right, so we are going to move on. I will introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Dr. Louise Edwards. She is a Canadian physics and astronomy professor. She's working at California Polytechnic in coastal California. Previously, she was a lecturer at Yale University and has taught at Mount Allison University and Trent University. She received her PhD in physics from Laval University in Quebec, Canada in 2007. Optical and infrared spectroscopy, along with photometric data from X-ray through radio wavelengths, allows Dr. Edwards to study the formation and evolution of galaxies. She is particularly interested in the cores and infall regions of rich galaxy clusters. In 2002, she was pictured on a Canadian stamp. Louise was born and raised in Victoria, BC, and returns whenever she gets the chance. So without further ado, Dr. Louise Edwards.
Thank you. Merci. Bonjour. Hello to everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm just going to set my slides up here and start my presentation. This is the presentation this is the first slide I like to show in February. This is my Happy Black History Month slide, and I prepared this for a high school in California that is, it's mostly Black students. And in preparing this, I had to dig deep into what the young kids do. Anyways, I found out that King T'Challa has a PhD in physics. Did you know that? I didn't know that. It's very exciting. Wakanda forever. So I'm just listing a few people with PhDs in physics here. This is my stamp. Of course, I have to show it every time I have the opportunity. There, and I just, there's lots of us with PhDs in physics, but I just wanted to take a moment to highlight a few and show some pictures. So this is Dr. Williams. She's the first African-American woman to get a PhD in theoretical astrophysics. This is Dean Williams, who I was lucky enough to spend some time with at Yale. It's one of the I know him, he doesn't know me situations. He has a PhD in experimental particle physics. And I love showing this photo of Albert Einstein lecturing at Lincoln University. So down in the United States, there are universities called historically Black universities. Of course, wasn't that long ago that if you were Black, you couldn't go anywhere where there was white people. Particularly could go to university. If you wanted to go to university, you had to go to one of these HBCUs. These universities, many of them still exist and do a wonderful job of graduating large numbers of Black undergraduate degrees in physics. So I like to start right there. So this is my favorite image when I think about stargazing. Okay, this is, of course, you know this better than me, probably. At RASC, this is the Big Dipper. I love thinking about the Big Dipper because when I was a child, I have visceral memories of looking up into the sky, especially with my father in our telescope. He would set that up on the back porch, and when I was probably about 7 or 8 are the memories I'm thinking of, we would look, stare at the stars. In particular, you know, the Big Dipper, it's always there in Canada. It's such a nice constellation to think about. This is me on my 14th birthday. It was not a good year. These days, I'm thinking about larger systems. So rather than stars that appear to be in the same neighborhood of our sky that are well within our own galaxy, I enjoy thinking about galaxies outside of our Milky Way. In fact, the largest ones in the local universe are sort of my pet galaxies, so-called Brightest cluster galaxies. These systems live in even larger systems in clusters of galaxies. So like this picture right here is Abell 2744. It's a rich cluster of galaxies relatively nearby. And it has all, you see these, every spot you see, of course, is an entire galaxy with billions or more stars and even more mass and dark matter. So my name is Louise Edwards. I'm an assistant professor at Cal Poly in California. I have 2 kids. This is Skylar. The little boy's not having a good day there, I suppose. I like galaxies in clusters. That's what I study. And this is my path. I started out in Victoria and I stayed there all throughout my undergraduate degree. I went to UVic. I then moved to Halifax and did my master's there. I then moved to Quebec City and got to practice my French. It was, I tried. J'ai essayé. I tried. I lived there for 4 years to get my PhD. Went to Trent for a postdoctoral position, to Caltech for a few years in California, back on the East Coast to Mount Allison, then to Yale, back on the West Coast to Cal Poly, where I finally am, and I'm just a few months from tenure, which in some ways is like something is a milestone in this particular career. So thinking about this and thinking about, honoring the fact that this is a celebration of Black history and thinking about for myself what it means to be a Black Canadian, I think that the fact that in Victoria, growing up, it's a little different now. In Victoria, growing up, I was the only one in any space I occupied. The only Black person on the street, other than my family, like in the school, on the street, certainly in physics class. I think has given me let me use it. I'm unafraid to occupy a space where I'm the only one. So physics is a pretty male-dominated field. And I think that there's less of a fear of being the only one. And I think a lot of that has to do with my experience growing up Black in Canada, which is, of course, not everybody's experience growing up Black in Canada. I'll also feel like that this experience has given me a don't give up kind of vibe. And in some ways, which is awesome, which is really great. I'm really excited about where I am. And in some ways, is a tough load to bear. Always yes, women can do physics. Yes, Black people can do physics. There's always that little voice in my head that I fight hard against. But yeah, like this, so here we go. So I think those are the 2 main things. I'm also quite motivated to do a lot of extra work, which is some of my favorite work, working towards an equitable and inclusive astrophysics community. All right, so I am an observational extragalactic astronomer. This means I go to the telescope. And so so I spent a lot of time on very high, very dry mountains. I use these facilities to collect photons from galaxies very far away. And then I spend the next few months, reducing this data and trying to make sense of it. One of my favorite things to do is work with students. I work mostly with undergraduate students. Here's one of my students and I, that we're actually, you can't tell because we're just in front of computers, right? But we're actually operating a 4-meter telescope in Chile here. And the particular project that I want to talk about today, so if I talk about myself, I have to talk about my work. But the particular project I want to talk about today uses the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope. And moreover, uses a state-of-the-art instrument, best in the world type instrument, which is called a imaging spectrograph. So every pixel on your image also takes a spectrum. And this allows you to get the kinematic motion information for your sources, for your galaxies, in addition to the shape information, the morphological information. At the same time, you can also build slices, images at any wavelength, at any color that you want, that the instrument is sensitive to. So it's actually a Canadian instrument from my alma mater, from Laval, who built and designed this instrument, and it's on a 4-meter telescope at the top of Mauna Kea in Hawaii called the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope. So I want to spend a minute talking about my research, which is galaxies on the edge, right? That's what I've titled this one. Properties of galaxies on the edge of distant superclusters. And I just plucked this from the most recent scientific seminar that I gave, which was the other day. So galaxies on the edge. So why study galaxies on the edge? What is a galaxy? You all probably have a very good idea of what is a galaxy, but you'll let me say, in my view, what is a galaxy? And what is a galaxy cluster? So if I put my work into the context of, say, NASA's objectives, NASA's objectives are to search for planets and learn more about individual planets, exoplanets in particular, to learn about the formation and evolution of stars, individual stars, to learn about the formation and evolution of galaxies, large, concentrations of stars, and that's where my research fits in. Oopsies. Cosmology is the other NASA objective. So now it's talking about things like the Big Bang, ultimate fate of the universe, stuff like that. And then instrumentation, how can we build different eyes, new eyes into the universe? So from the NASA's Cosmic Origins program, we say, how did we get here? That's a fundamental question that we want to answer. So did galaxies evolve from the very first systems to the type we see today in the here and now, like the Milky Way in which we live? That's a fundamental driving question of mine and of astronomy today. So what is a galaxy? Galaxy is a bunch of stars, a bunch of gas and dust, right? The material that will eventually form new stars, and also material that has been ejected in some way, maybe by supernova or whatnot, by evolved stars. And then you can guess what I'm showing here was the most important component of galaxies, right? Dark matter, right? Dark matter, very important, most important component of a galaxy if you're speaking of math. But if you look at galaxies, you get this beautiful, and oh man, I'm sure many of you out there have made your own beautiful images of galaxies that probably rival these, right? We see all these beautiful colors, all these beautiful shapes. Galaxies come in all of these different sizes, but you can tease out essentially 2 different types of galaxies, right? So on the left, you have elliptical galaxies. They're red stars. These are evolved stars. So these are stars that formed a long time ago. They're going to be around for a long time. And the shape of these galaxies is round, not very much what we would call structure. On the other side are blue spiral galaxies, like our own Milky Way. These have a disk, they have a bulge in the middle, spiral arms, blue colors, which means that they have been recently forming stars, or probably forming stars right now. These are galaxies that are doing something. They have lots of gas and dust to keep forming more stars for a long time. And they're common in what we call the field. So they're common outside of those dense galaxy clusters, which I was saying I really like. The ellipticals are very smooth. They have red colors. They have little gas or dust. So they're not forming stars now, and they probably won't in the future. And they're very common in the cores of the galaxies. So they're the kinds that we usually look at. But for this talk, I want to talk about galaxies on the edge of superclusters. So this is where we might find some blue galaxies outside of the cluster core. So what is a galaxy cluster? Galaxy cluster is, instead of a bunch of stars, a bunch of galaxies, right? You know what this is? Dark matter, very important. And then I thought I would list this because it's less commonly thought of in terms of an important part of a cluster, but it's a lot more important in terms of the mass, in terms of governing what's happening in the cluster itself to these galaxies, is a hot gas, right? These galaxy clusters are bathed, they are in a sea of photons, hydrogen atoms that are at such a high temperature that they're releasing X-ray emitting photons. This is gas at like 1,000,000 Kelvin. So here's a beautiful image of the core of Coma, the most nearby galaxy cluster. And if I put that hydrogen gas on, lay it on in to scale, you can see that it extends well beyond the main galaxies of the center, right? There's two little white things in the middle, just outside of the red patch. Those were those big galaxies. The red is the most dense hydrogen gas, and the light purple is the lightest. So this is what you should think about when you think about what a galaxy cluster looks like. Remember to have your X-ray glasses on as well. What would happen if you take a galaxy, a single galaxy, like a spiral galaxy that's got lots of gas and dust, that's forming stars, that wants to keep forming stars with all its gas and dust, and you hurl it through this hot X-ray emitting gas? I've been lucky enough to work recently with a range of students, and Angela, who's pictured here, is actually, she's not a physics major, she's an art and design major. So she made this little cartoon for me after we had some scientific chats. So I love to show it, she did a great job. Imagine this spiral galaxy, it's blue because it's got a lot of stars, it's got its own gas in it. And this fluffy, darker blue stuff, that's the hydrogen gas of the cluster I was talking about. Now imagine hurling this through. The interaction between the galaxy and the cluster can strip the gas of the galaxy itself right out of there. This is called tidal stripping. And this takes some time. So stars in the galaxy will eventually redden, they'll evolve and they'll turn red, and there won't be any more gas left in the galaxy. So you have this red and dead galaxy. So is that how clusters got all of these big red and dead galaxies in the cluster core? That's a question we're kind of asking. How did we go from these bursty, small, star-bursting galaxies in the early universe to these large, red, dead, and old galaxies that we see in today's universe? So my scientific question is there evidence that any particular environment drives the changes seen in galaxies? So put another way, what is the frequency, how often? What is the star formation, how much? What is the star formation rate for galaxies in the different parts of the supercluster, in the core of the supercluster, on the edge of the supercluster? And so to start tackling this question, we use this amazing instrument I was talking about, it's called CTEL on CFHT, to go gather data, spectroscopic and imaging data, all across the supercluster. Now, these objects are huge, okay? So if you were to try to take a picture of one of these objects with a traditional, CCD, you would have to take like hundreds of individual shots to get the entire cluster. One of the things that's really difficult about studying the edges of clusters is that most of the galaxies you see are actually foreground or background galaxies. So you need the spectra to know their 3D place in the universe. So I think I have 3 minutes left and I'm good to go for time, I think. So what I'm showing here is our result, okay? So the light gray core is the light gray circle is a core of a a rich galaxy cluster. You see some subclumps, some other little gray regions. And then you see this huge extension off to the side. That's a filament, a cluster filament that's actually connecting to another cluster. So just as galaxies, there's another step up, galaxy clusters. Galaxy clusters, there's also another step up, galaxy superclusters, clusters connected by filaments. And we wanted to know, what are the galaxies like on the edge of clusters in these filaments? So these blue and yellow dots and triangles are the galaxies where we detected star formation. We looked everywhere. We only saw star formation in the filament of the galaxy and on the edge of some of these subclusters as well. So this is sort of a scientific version of that figure, right? We're showing the same data, but less cartooned up. And it's showing you that the dark blue dots are where we're very confident of our answers, and the star formation rate has been measured to a high degree. So most of the star-forming galaxies are found around the edge of the cluster. And many of them seem to be maybe merging with each other as well. So we think that that is what's happening on the outside of clusters. These galaxies are turning from blue star-forming spiral Milky Way-like clusters into red, merging together, getting bigger, losing their gas, losing their dust, using it as they fall into the core of the cluster. So galaxies on the edge, properties of galaxies on the edge of the supercluster. Many of them are actively forming stars. Many of them are blue. Many of them have irregular morphologies or nearby neighbors, signs of colliding with each other, building up by merging with each other. This is consistent that galaxies evolve from blue to red before entering the cluster core. And that is the story I'd like to leave you with.
Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. I think what we will be doing is leaving questions to the end when all the speakers have spoken. And then we'll take all the questions relevant to the different presentations. Thank you very much, Dr. Edwards. That was very interesting. Okay, so our next speaker that I will be introducing is Diana Phillips. Diana is a graduate from McGill University, where she got a Bachelor's of Education, a PPCC certified professional life coach from Concordia University, and a certified Adventures in Wisdom youth coach from Austin, Texas. Former educator and consultant with Lester B. Pearson School Board, hobby entrepreneur, owner and operator of Science Yourself, which is a really cool place that you should check out. No G's About I. Youth programs, Team Genuity, Girls is Space program. Diana is an alumnus and has accomplished certifications from the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, including the Zero G Corporation Teachings in Space Weightless Flight program. Diana is a founding member of Montreal Storytellers Guild and Master Storyteller. She is a proud mentor for the McGill University Black Mentorship Program. She is the president of DKG Quebec, an international organization of leading women educators impacting education worldwide since 2019. Diana is the sole, Diana is the sole Canadian principal investigator with Magnitude.io Exolab plants. She has provided more than 15 years of presentations and workshops at JSCH, so Johnson Space Center, Houston, and has trained over 10,000 educators during her career. In February 2021, she was selected as a member of the elite SEEC crew team at Johnson Space Center Space Exploration Educators Conference, where she serves as lead space science educator in the province of Quebec. As a lead teacher, her aim is to empower teachers to build leadership competencies by creating innovative STEM and STEAM programs for their students, schools, and communities. Over the course of the years, Diana has partnered to help educators get inspired and provide unique programs to marginalized students in Mexico, Brazil, and the Philippines, and at home. Diana is a volunteer education chair slash director slash educator at the Montreal Aviation Museum, and she's a frequent presenter for local schools, organizations, and works in collaboration with 12 countries across the globe. So welcome, Diana. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And wonderful presentation, Dr. Louise Edwards. Could I please be a student in your class? I would absolutely love that. I'm going to pull up my screen. Let's go right there. Here we go. And away we go. So thank you again for that introduction. And I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate you asking me to speak. This has been a very, very busy month with the celebrations of Black History Month. And I call it Celebrating Black History Month because we are celebrating Blacks throughout history, including history going forward, his and her story in recognition of that. Before I begin, I just want to share a quote that I actually found from Relentless Indigenous Women. It was posted on their Facebook page. And that quote said, "They didn't steal slaves. They stole scientists, doctors, architects, astronomers, teachers, entrepreneurs, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, and then they made them slaves." Inspiration breeds motivation. This is what I'm trying to get children to understand, and also educators, because right now we're in a time when inspiration is very much needed, especially during this pandemic and heading into the endemic, hopefully. So how did that happen for me? Well, being a little girl, being raised in Chateauguay, I am American, I'm also Canadian. My father was American Armed Forces, and my mother was raised here, born and raised in Montreal. And we spent a lot of time in our home in Chateauguay, where we were the Black family, the one and only. And we spent time, especially when I was little, watching Star Trek. And this woman, Lieutenant Uhura, who was her character, was quite impressive to me. And I love the stars, the moon, and everything about it. My mother often came out in the yard and said, "What are you doing? Why are you lying in the grass? And what are you looking at?" And I spent a lot of time doing that. I don't recommend this if there's any children watching, but one of the things I would do is I'd find rocks. So I think there was a geologist in me very early in life, and I put the rocks in my mouth, and she'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "This is an experience. This is science." And she'd say, "Take the rocks out of your mouth." So who was this amazing lady? This is my inspiration that breeds motivation. She is the woman who taught me that when you are told no, you flip it into a yes and say, "Watch them go." I started in Nunavik, Quebec, in a small town called Alpaluk at Taksakalak School. This was a very tiny village of 90 people, 30 of which were my students. And we only had about 5 students at a time throughout the years that I was there, 2.5 years. Absolutely great place to be able to help them understand that not all Southerners were white. That was an absolute shock to them. So for me, being called a Halonet was also a shock, because a Halonet meant white Southerner, but they didn't have another name for me. And that's fine, because what I taught them was that I'm a teacher. So my dream and my mission is this: to leave contrails of aerospace STEM passion around the world, to set fire underneath everyone. And working in the fields that I work in, as were mentioned earlier, I can tell you that I don't find as many Blacks here in Montreal, and I am hoping to educate kids to become those and take the spots of those that are not there. Simply put, I freaking love science. It's as simple as that. And I was that kid that was told, actually, the question was posed in high school, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I want to be a pilot. I've dreamed about going into the sky." And of course, the consultant put his pen down, looked at me and started laughing and said, "Black girls don't pilot." The shock of that, it could have stopped everything. My grade 6 science teacher, when he asked me to do a project, basically said to me that my project, even though I learned how to hook up a circuit all on my own and had a flashing light for the sun, my science teacher told me this: It's not art, it's science. So he got that wrong. We forgive and we move on. So I love working with anyone. I'm fortunate to have been gifted the largest moon map that is available out there through the Aldrin Foundation in the United States. That is getting ready to journey out to community groups again, where we create landers and explore and convince children that you can be part of this mission in space, no matter what part you want to be, engineering, tech, anything. I also work with homeschoolers. The pandemic was very difficult for many of our children. So through Top Tutara and Science Yourself, No G's About It, we were able to provide online and some on-site classes and it keep kids being inspired. And that includes astronomy. It includes everything about space. When I say aerospace, it's all encompassing. Crossing the globe and inspiring children who have limited or no access. There are kids who have no access. I've worked with teachers who physically took science away as a punishment, so because they weren't behaving. So this is why I work with educators to say, this is actually a right to learn, and that we don't penalize kids by removing subject areas, especially those who need it. And working with Malaysia, Brazil, and Mexico was absolutely a game changer. In fact, I became a board player, and I don't think I've ever been a game piece before. And we worked wonderfully to be able to inspire these kids who were, many of them, on the streets, and some of them who were in homes with no technology. I can only thank Galaxies for asking me to do that. Again, the contrail. So when I was 43 years old, I was sent to Space Camp, Alabama. And that was because we're doing initiatives for our school board in Montreal. I had the opportunity to meet this lady, Grace Corrigan. She's the mother of Krista McAuliffe. She was honestly one of the best persons I could have met up with at that time. Because in education, we need to keep ourselves learning at all times. We're lifelong learners, and we also want to keep inspiring. So I asked her, what should I tell my children when I come back from this journey here at Space Camp? And her answer was, tell them yes. And since then, I've developed a program and a presentation that's traveled quite a bit right now called The Power of Yes. It's exactly what my mother told me. Say yes, don't accept no. I was afforded the opportunity to fly on Boeing 747 0G. This was game-changing as well. So to be a big kid in a floating classroom and understanding physics of how your body reacts and being able to complete 5 experiments in the 0G situation was incredible. Having opportunities to connect with people from around the world. We don't do that enough, I think. I think it's important for our youth and us to connect and help us understand how people are living, who they are, where they come from. And this is how we celebrate our histories. This is how we get to know each other. So Science Yourself, what do we do? Well, we're actually the first Canadian leguminots. So that's not astronauts, that's leguminots. We are involved in a program where we are growing seeds and plants on the International Space Station. Being a part of this has been an incredible journey. So we know that while the characters on Star Trek, well, they could last forever on food replication, and nobody wants to eat gog. We need to figure out our own food replication. ExoLab 9 was our last journey, and it's not the only one. We've got more coming. ExoLab 10 is on its way. The ExoLab looks exactly like this. We are communicating from our classrooms, and in some cases, my homeschoolers have one situated in their home, but we communicate with the International Space Station. We've been luckily provided the opportunity to actually see our astronauts working with the plants in space. And while they're growing on the space station, they're actually growing in our homes and in our labs and in our classrooms. So we are Generation Space Farmers here in Quebec. It's all new ground for us, but we're doing it. We are going. So why is that important? Because the Earth, below our feet right now is depleting. There is some projections that we really only have about less than 10 to 20 years in the viability of our soil. It's a huge problem. So what are we going to do? Well, there's even more problems in space. Here we go. We're going off to Artemis. We're going to go to the moon with the Gateway. And no microorganisms, toxic perchlorates, clay-sized particles, rapid water loss. We've got some problems, but we'll solve them. And we're going to solve them by having our students be exposed, no matter who they are, Blacks, whites, Germans, anything. And we want that because we have to affect the suboptimal conditions that are in space for growth. We need that. We need to achieve nodulation. So the students have been working really hard on this. This is actually a RASC volunteer right here, Eileen Algras. And these are my sons who are totally into piloting. One is a pilot already certified. The other one is a scientist heading into the medical field. So if we can get them this young, we will get this. And that's where we're aiming for. So we have a lot of questions that are leading to the investigation. These are actually our plants that were here in Canada for ExoLab 8. They didn't do so well. And then the question becomes to the kids, when we fail, what do we do? Well, a good scientist keeps on trying. So space farming, where our research right now is about nitrogen fixation in microgravity. You can look actually on magnitude.io. You will find the YouTube videos of our plants being provided with water and nutrients. This is how they fly. And it is a very exciting time for us. So when we told our students we are go for grow, you can imagine the elation that they all expressed. So root nodulation, nitrogen fixation, that's the key. We're getting ready for alfalfa to grow. We are working in collaboration with the International Space Station National Laboratory. And also, here's a good look at what our ExoLab boxes look like when they are go for grow. So we have a lot of achievements that are happening, and it is global. 9 missions already, 10 coming in, thousands of children participating worldwide. I'm happy to say that 2 Canadian schools right here in Montreal are going to be the first. 1 English Montreal School Board, as well as 1 Lester B, are on board for magnitude 10 launch. And then how do we get to space? Well, we're really happy to have our wonderful boxes that encompass them. And there's how we go. We go with SpaceX. So what an amazing thing for children to be involved in. SpaceX, that's very cool. And of course, the Cygnus spacecraft is named after a Black woman, a historical woman, a representation to our Black youth that we can be who we want to be. So we will work on next the capturing of carbon dioxide with ExoLab 10, and we're going to be working with alfalfa. So when ExoLab 8 returned home, we had a wonderful online event. Unbelievable to see children from South Africa, parts of Africa, 4,000 children, Brazil, everywhere you can think of. This is student-driven research. This is ExoLab 9. They did come back. And now I would just like to take a second to honor the people that I work with. The co-investigators, unfortunately, we just lost our Tony So before the holidays came in. And we also have partners from across the world. So that was then, and this is now. Final frontier, never. And that's what children need to understand. The final frontier is not in space, and it's not on Earth. There is no final frontier. We are going to live in places that no one lived before, and Canada is going to be there. So February 3rd, 2022, being inducted into crew at Johnson Space Center in Houston. This is an amazing opportunity to be able to allow myself to have more access to resources that will be brought to my students and also to teachers anywhere. Anyone who asks, we help them out. STEMgenuity just launched before the Christmas holiday, and then sadly, COVID shut us down again, but we will be back. And STEMgenuity is basically for girls, but I will take anybody who would like to come. And the McGill Black Mentorship Program is an absolute pride for me to be able to work with young girls and women who are reaching forward. So some days it takes a lot of work to get to where you want to be. This is what I was told by my mother. Do the hard work. Ignore the negatives. Believe me, they were there. And they're still there. And keep forging ahead. Be brave. Be daring. Design you. And this is what I share with my students. Design yourself. The payoff will be greater than you ever imagined. And I'm thankful for my struggles. Because again, yes, there were many. I would not have stumbled across my strengths. And they've been developed by many people around the world. So I want to thank you for listening today, and I appreciate being a part of this event.
Thank you very much, Diana. That was very inspiring. It's very uplifting to see all the work that's being done to educate children from all around the world in the sciences. Thank you for your work in that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we will be moving on to our last but not least speaker, Dr. Kevin Hewitt. He is a full professor in the Department of Physics and Atmospheric Science and former chair of Senate from 2015 to 2021 at Dalhousie University. In his molecular imaging lab, he has developed novel nanoparticle probes for cancer imaging and treatment, new optical imaging approaches, and a prototype medical diagnostic tool. He completed his Bachelor of Science in Physics and Biology at the University of Toronto in 1992, where he received the U of T Physics Prize. At Dalhousie, he unified his deep and abiding interest in science and community engagement by co-founding in 2003 the award-winning Imhotep's Legacy Academy, a STEM outreach program for Black students from junior high to university. He's featured in Cool Black North, a film which explores the unique and vibrant Canadian Black community and its role in our country's contemporary identity. His contributions have been recognized by a Youth Committee Service Award in 1999, the Harry Jerome Award for Professional Excellence in 2014, Nova Scotia Discovery Centre Science Champion in 2018, NSERC Award for Science Promotion in 2021, and the Rosemary Gill Award for Service to Students in 2021. So without further ado, Dr. Hewitt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for the introduction. And I'm really pleased to be here to see some familiar faces from Halifax, Dr. Edwards, and lovely to also learn about all the great work Diana's doing. They've both emphasized resilience, I think, in their comments. And it's something that, a character trait we all have to have in order to make it through as a minority in STEM. So without saying any more at that point, I'm going to share my screen and the sound. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm currently standing on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. I'd like to acknowledge that, and I do work in all that I do to incorporate Indigenous perspectives. Writing a report in 2015 on access and retention of Indigenous and African Canadian students to DAO. So I wanted to start with some statistics recently gathered for the first survey of the Canadian physics communities, first diversity survey. So having called for this more than 20 odd years ago, I I conducted this survey with a colleague, Anastasia Smolina at University of Toronto. And together we surveyed over 3,000 physicists with the help of the Canadian Association of Physicists. And what you see in front of you is one of the snapshots of the participation by physicists who identify as white. We had to collapse into BIPOC groups. And what do you notice? There's a tremendous growth when you go from undergraduate to the faculty in one demographic, white men, rising from there 25% to almost 70%. Now note that this survey is a snowball type. So that will lead to an overrepresentation of groups that are underrepresented in the community. So this figure is probably smaller than actual. So you can see that at the undergraduate level, in these two curves here, that BIPOC woman sits right here, BIPOC men and white women. If you follow the trajectory here, you can see that white women are retained at almost the same level throughout the different career stages, whereas BIPOC men and BIPOC women fall, their proportion falls as you go to other career stages, faculty to research institutes, private sector. So we see a loss at a very crucial stage, right? And so when you now drill down to look at Black physicists in Canada, you see a very disappointing statistic. So overall, in our survey, only 1% of respondents identified as Black. And this compares to 6.4% within the 15 to 34-year-old population in Canada. So sixfold underrepresentation. When you look at the number of undergraduates who identify as man or woman or gender diverse, you see it's 17, okay, 17. We had to suppress numbers under 5, so you can see here that is less than 5 in both those categories. And when you go to faculty, there are 5 faculty who identify as male, and less than 5 identify as female. So these statistics are really stark. And if you compare it with Indigenous physicists in Canada, this is not a typo. It's indeed almost identical number. Well, the identical number in the survey identified as Indigenous at the undergraduate level, a total of 17. So if I toggle back and forth, it's exactly the same. Now, for graduate students, 5 identify as 5 women identify as Indigenous, and less than 5 males. And you can see at the faculty level, less than 5 in both categories. So one of the first things I did when I arrived at Dalhousie in 2000 was to connect with the community in order to address this problem. I didn't need these statistics to know that we were absent from the academy. So In 2003, I co-founded the Imhotep's Legacy Academy, and its mission is to increase the number of Black students in STEM. So I have a little video here that gives you a little snapshot of the Academy. I'll just play it. Tell me if you can't hear it, okay?
Dalhousie University was founded in 1818. By 2007, the 100th year of engineering education in Nova Scotia, fewer than 15 African Nova Scotians had graduated from Dalhousie University with an engineering degree. The first African Nova Scotian female to complete an engineering degree at Dalhousie graduated in 2010. By 2007, fewer than 5 African Nova Scotians had graduated from the School of Medicine. The first known African Nova Scotian to enter the graduate degree program in physics began her studies in 2010. Africans have a rich history of involvement in the sciences. From Imhotep, our namesake's genius in designing Egypt's first pyramid and being credited as the world's first physician, to Canadian scientist Elijah McCoy's advancements in engineering, to Philip Emeagwali's work on the supercomputer, Africans have been instrumental in the development of the scientific world. Despite this rich history, African Nova Scotian students rarely enter sciences and engineering. This could be because of a lack of role models, a lack of encouragement, or a lack of preparation. The reasons are complex. We want to change all of that. Imhotep Legacy Academy's focus is to increase the number of African Nova Scotians pursuing higher level education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematic fields. Combined, these disciplines are called STEM studies. Our after-school program provides African Nova Scotian students in grades 7, 8, and 9 with weekly STEM enrichment through an interactive, hands-on approach. University students mentor the junior high students and build relationships with them, becoming role models of the heights they can attain. At Imhotep, our goal is to help students realize their dreams and maybe make some new ones.
When I grow up, I don't really know what I want to be, but I know that I want to work more in the studies of science.
I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist.
I want to be a physiotherapist when I grow up.
I want to be an engineer.
I want to be a doctor that delivers babies.
So every time I play this video, it's one from 2010, I get a bit nostalgic and choked up, in fact, because that student in grade 7 who said they want to be an engineer, well, today they are an engineer at Dalhousie, graduated. Another student pictured there, Haley Matthews, is working on our Young Gifted and Black Future Physicists project that just started this year. And, you know, there are more examples like that. It's been, you know, one of my greatest pleasures to do this work in collaboration with many. So the African Nova Scotian community, it's the oldest community, 400 years of history, scattered throughout many communities that are pictured here. They're among the youngest group within the province of Nova Scotia, among the highest unemployment rates, lower rates of university degree attainment, and low income. So we've been working for now 19 years to try and affect change. And I share with you some of the stats that I think has really shown that the program is having the effect. So in 2010, in science, there are 6 African Nova Scotians. The first African Nova Scotian to graduate with a degree in physics came out of my lab, Leanne Lucas. She's now in the private sector. Whereas in 2017, there were 37 in science. When you look at 2010 and 2017 in engineering, the changes are similarly quite encouraging. And in medicine, less than 5 had graduated from the School of Medicine in the history of the university. And in 2017, there were 6 graduates. So comparing 2010 to 2020, there's been significant enrollment increases, 10 times in engineering, health 7 times, science 3 times, computer science 2 times. 87% of our students in 2017 entered STEM programs. We awarded scholarships totaling almost $200,000 to 22 students, and additional research scholarships to 35 students. This is a program that is really focused on the number one strategy that we feel is having this impact, and that's the number of contact hours. We don't, of course, we report the number of students we engage, but we have weekly activities. And so we engage the student on an ongoing basis through their academic life. We have interactive activities, as you could imagine, and I've seen in that video, where they can take a product home and share with their parents and siblings, etc. We provide financial support with investment from TD Bank of $1 million in 2010. Role modeling is something that is important, and all of our mentors delivering the programs are themselves students of African descent in STEM. We build the confidence we know they can achieve. And, as was mentioned earlier, being the only one means that it's important to get together with others with similar interests. So the posse effect is also a key strategy. We have a tri-mentoring approach. We didn't enter a program with this intention, but it turns out that it's indeed what's led to the success. So we have university students of African descent delivering STEM enrichment in junior high, and I'll describe our 18 programs in another slide. However, there's STEM faculty of African descent, including myself, in your faculty, one faculty member in chemistry, another in biology, another in engineering, who work together to, help these students. So here's our suite of programs covering K to university. So we get them interested with science, magic shows, and so on. During the K to 6 years, we ran a vaccine confidence program this year, drones and rockets, just get them interested. And then grades 7 to 9 in Nova Scotia, that's junior high, not elsewhere in the country. The core program is the weekly after science enrichment activities. There's a magic show to get them interested. We've inaugurated a science fair competition this year, and also a Young Gifted and Black Future Physicists camp that will straddle junior high and high school. In the high school years, grade 10 to 12 in Nova Scotia, we do a number of different things, including a conference, a Black Excellence in STEM and Health conference, trivia contests, quiz tournaments, coding, tutoring. And when they get to university, we provide them with research scholarships, partnering with all the faculties at the university. The most recent partnership with the Faculty of Dentistry. And throughout this period, basically, they are offered what's called Promise Scholarship. So if they participate in our program in junior high, they get a promise of $500 renewable towards entry to post-secondary. And each year they participate, that promise builds. So they can eventually get a $5,000 renewable scholarship, so $20,000. And that's important because, you know, many are first in family, and so their perception of the cost of university is much higher than it actually is. So we build their confidence, we help them build their STEM aptitude, and break down those financial barriers for access. So lots of fun things. I don't have to validate how these things can be exciting, but I'd just like to show you a video of, we've put together all of our activities on our website, and many of the activities, we're slowly building a database of sort of the description of these activities, being presented by Black students, Black STEM students, delivering activities that are part of the Nova Scotia curriculum. So eventually these series of videos could be rolled out to the schools to show the rest of the community, you know, that we are, you know, STEM stars. So these are just a few of the activities. Great DNA activity I did with my kids the other day. And this is part of the activity, extracting DNA. We did that together, actually, over Christmas. And it's great jumping off point to talk about CRISPR technology and so on. So we inaugurated offices and a learning center within the engineering campus, brand new facility, delivering our STEM activities in the bottom picture here, an open learning space with associated offices. We have 3D printers, our STEM activity bins, soldering, wet lab, experiment sync tools, etc., etc. So I wanted to just mention the really, you know, the great impact it's had. We employ 35 plus university students yearly, 6 full-time staff. I talked about the partnership with TD Bank. So we have partnerships across provincial, federal, commercial, foundations, community, all the universities in Nova Scotia we partner with to deliver the activities locally. And our budget, this is 2018-19, it's about $500,000. So thank you for listening and hearing about the Academy. I wanted to get to this, but maybe I'll do that after I share one other thing. How much time do I have?
You have time.
Okay, so I'll share another exciting activity that was inaugurated in 2020. This is now a national effort. So let me share my screen. And yes, this one. Okay, so many of you may know Chanda Prescott Weinstein, person who helped us initiate the strike for Black Lives. Well, also in 2020, we inaugurated the founding of the Canadian Black Scientists Network. And this has been another labor of love. Our mission is to elevate, make visible, and connect Black Canadians pursuing or possessing advanced degrees in STEM across sectors. We want to, one, increase the intake and retention of Black youth in STEM, increase the representation of Black Canadians as STEM researchers and practitioners, and advocate for equitable practices in funding and awards. Interestingly, we had a conversation with the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, their Chief of Staff, because within Minister Champon's mandate letter is exactly these things. So we're working nationally, and one of the key bit of research that Carl James has done to uncover the streaming that is taking us out of the reaching our potential, the academic stream. You can see here that Black students are overrepresented in the applied stream. His efforts has actually led to a change in this policy. So now there's no longer streaming. But I was one of those students in Toronto. Were it not for my mother, I would have ended up in the applied stream. So we can see also, if you look at statistics from Universities Canada about what happens as we go through the different career pathways. We can see that both visible minority or racialized individuals along the academic path to senior leaders fall dramatically, and Blacks as well. So where is this growth then in women at the senior leadership level? It's not in racialized women. And you can look then at the leadership in the president's leadership team and among deans. Your eyes are not deceiving you. That's the proportion of individuals who identify as white within the dean and senior leadership teams by university. So obviously we have a tremendous problem to repair. One of the things we started this year is a youth arm of the Canadian Black Scientists Network. I think, Diana, you mentioned science fairs. We're going to start. We've started the first Canada-wide science fair focusing on Black students. So we're now a region of Youth Science Canada, just inaugurated. And we're now focused on encouraging Black youth in grades 7 to 12 to participate in our two-phase competition. We just held the first phase on January 30th at our BSTEM conference, and the phase 2 will happen on April 2nd. So we had 12 entries, and we can submit 3 to the Canada-wide Science Fair. So I encourage you to attend on April 2nd. And this is just the schedule. And we are partnering, we've partnered with Pursue STEM in Toronto and Imhotep's Legacy Academy. No connection to me. For them to work with the students locally. In the coming year, we've already started conversation with Ethos Lab, which has really flipped the paradigm for me. And maybe you can ask me in the question period about why Ethos Lab has really changed my view about the way we should approach this. Visions of Science in Toronto and Catalysts in Montreal. So I've had conversation with all these groups, and they'll be, encouraging students in the future. I'll leave you with this this stat. I did a bit of a back of the envelope calculation. I asked somebody, well, how many Black students are there in grades 7 to 12? They couldn't tell me, but StatsCan can tell you how many students overall there are in those grades. So 2.2 million. If you use the 6.4% for Blacks in Canada, generally, you'd expect 138,000 Black students across the country. So 25,000 youth participate in science fairs in Canada, the regional fairs. So we would expect that about 1,600 Black students should be participating. And then going on to the Canada-wide Science Fair, there are 500 youth in Canada who participate. We should expect about 32 Black students. I've been to the Canada-wide Science Fair, to the regional fair. That number is not achieved. So we're trying to change that with this national science fair competition. And I'll leave you with just a look at some of the activities. Oh, you're not seeing that screen. I could show you some of the activities or the projects later during the question period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hewitt. That was very inspiring. I'd love to see all these great initiatives being done. It's truly a really good work. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to a question period. So if ever you have a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A chat if you are on Zoom. If you are watching from YouTube, ask your question in the comments section and we will get to them. I see there are 3 actually on Zoom.
Yes, so we already have 3 questions that were asked by Paul. And the most recent one is for Dr. Hewitt. So are you ready? Paul asks, I drive the school bus for North Preston and asked students, 60, in junior high and high school who wanted to go into science. Only 3 said they did. All said they had been discouraged. Any suggestions on giving them back the desire to go into science?
Yeah, we need to engage them. They need to see, themselves reflected in the field. So that's part of the answer, of course. The support at home, the financial support, all of the things we're doing there. We're obviously not reaching everybody. If that question was posed in Preston, a historic Black community. So this gives me a chance to talk about Ethos Lab, actually. So Ethos Lab was founded by somebody who was not in STEM. Okay, not in STEM. So her approach was to build community first, and then within the space they have to say, oh well, over here there's a little bit of science going on. So the target for Ethos Lab is the student who would not otherwise have been interested in STEM. And so I think every program can be improved, and I think that's one way we can improve our program. We are actually undergoing a strategic planning process, because we came at it as, hey, we get excited about STEM so if you just put these activities in front of the students, they should also be excited. So we're getting the students who have an interest, and we build that interest. We're not getting the student who is totally turned off by STEM. So something like building they have at Ethos Lab the Oculus. Oh yeah, it's a what word am I looking for? A metaverse or whatever room, right? So you draw them in with that. So I think that community building for the non-STEM students is really important, and don't show them any of the STEM stuff, just sort of so so a paradigm shift is needed for sure.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. Community is key. We have another question. Yes, go ahead, Virginia.
Oh, no, I was going to ask what our other two panelists would answer to that question as well. I'm curious to hear.
So I don't mind adding to that. And Dr. Kevin Hewitt is absolutely right about community. And it's also about getting children when they're really young. And that means starting right from the 4-year-old programs and exposing them to everything, physics, chemistry. One of the dreams I've always had is to make our elementary schools like our high schools, put labs in there, put in rooms that are makerspace and so on. And also cooking labs, anything and everything. So I think if we get them while they're young and we allow them to understand that these are options for you, then they will reach forward and start going forward. I think part of the problem is in education, we often box children. And I think the boxes have to be removed and we have to let everybody out.
Thank you for that.
Awesome. Dr. Edwards, do you have something to add on that?
The school bus question? I would, I assume you're a member of RASC. You could keep, you could keep on hand or bring a poster, or if you have information for your next stargazing party, have something that you could give to them that they could give to their parents and they could go be inspired. But what is the thing that you could do, right? We can all do a little something.
Yes, thank you so much for that answer. We have some more questions that popped in the Q&A box. So we have one from an anonymous attendee. This is a question for anyone, so I guess in some way it's for everyone. I would like to pursue physics as a career choice, but math is not my strong suit. I'm very willing to work hard and learn to love math, but could you please offer any tips or pieces of advice? Does anybody want to start answering this?
Do we know what grade they're in?
No, It's an anonymous attendee. If they can specify their grade level, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, we will assume elementary or high school.
So I'll just add that, within our program, we have, it's STE in 1 week, and then the M in the subsequent week. And there's a program at Dalhousie called Math Circles, which tries to introduce math in a fun, interactive way. And so, that additional building of the aptitude towards math through, that fun approach is one strategy. But as Dr. Edwards said, it's hard to give a prescription without the details about the patient.
I would say something I see in my students often is that some of the math struggles come from fear, dislike, or what have you. And a lot of that comes from under preparation or something. Like suddenly you're thrown in this class and you don't actually have the to use the university term, the prereq to be able to succeed in that. So if that's your situation, I would suggest taking your own time to step back. Like if you're in 10th grade, go find the 9th grade textbook, find somebody to talk about it with, maybe your parents, maybe some other friends who are into science, or maybe you have a friend who's, enjoys math in that way, but step back one side. That's not a bad thing. That's not a failure thing. That's making sure you are prepared for the level, whichever level you're at now. That would be some offhand advice.
So I would just add to that math isn't everything we do. It is the foundation of learning. And for anyone who is struggling, I totally agree with Dr. Louise Edwards. Fear is a true factor. They think that they can't get over the hurdle of mathematics. I've watched children struggle. I remember being that kid in class, crying over mathematics. And a lot of the career choices now, you're actually given the opportunity to learn on site. So for example, in talking with our astronauts, what we're being told is that we're going to teach you the math. When my son went to become a pilot, I said, we're going to teach you the math. You need the basics though. So getting a tutor, getting support 100% all the way for that. I think it's one of the ways to get a leg up on education in terms of mathematics. You don't have to go alone.
Yeah, and it's okay to fail, right? I mean, if you fail a class, you want to go back and learn it for sure, but if you fail something one time, that's not a big deal, right? So to not, again, I'm sort of assuming maybe taking what I see in some of my students sometimes, and I will share this, that in university level first year, like a lot of schools, 30% of the students fail the first year class. Okay, that doesn't mean that 30% of students can't do physics. But for whatever reason, you're doing other activities, you're learning lots of things at the same time, you're trying to be, you're put in a spot where everything's new, or you're learning, you're trying to learn things without the step below or whatever. Yeah, pull your socks up, do it again, find friends, community members to do your work with. That's one thing that we've noticed in education, is that learning is a social activity. So you might find that math is more fun if you find some friends to kind of work with it alongside you.
Absolutely. And also teaching children to look at the word. So a lot of times I spend talking to educators about the word mistakes. All right. So when we separate that, we take that miss and we move it over and we look at take it, we missed it, but we can take it again. And there's this forgiveness that they have to learn, that no subject's going to hold you down unless you allow that. Dr. Kevin Hewitt, you mentioned in the chat about something I said about resiliency. It really comes right down to that. We need to learn to be resilient in our subjects. So when it doesn't work the first time, we have to learn the courage, and we need to learn to be brave enough to try again, take it over. It's all good.
Yes, thank you so much for those answers. So perseverance is key. And yes, so anonymous attendee did specify that they are in grade 9. So the high school assumption was right. We have another question from Melinda that asks Galaxies. If hydrogen is lost in shift from blue to red as the galaxies age, what elements are left in abundance in older red galaxies that are measurable?
Oh my gosh, an astrophysics question. Thank you so much for that. Yes, so there's still lots of hydrogen in them, but there's not this sort of like cool elementary hydrogen that can go into forming stars. But something, you might know this already, something that stars do, the reason we're around, you may have heard this, we are stardust saying or whatever, is that in the early universe, everything was hydrogen and we needed stars and the physical processes going inside stars to be able to create everything outside of lithium. So the oxygen you're breathing, the carbon in your body, absolutely everything created inside stars and then exploding from stars. So, okay, so the question was, in galaxies going from blue to red, if the hydrogen is stripped off, what is left? So that hydrogen is stripped off, other little bits of gas are stripped off. What's left is no gas, still stars, the stars are still there. And the stars are mostly hydrogen. So it's not like there's no hydrogen anymore. There's just not loose, cold gas, hydrogen gas that can make everything else. So there's still stars totally made out of mostly hydrogen. With a little bit of carbon, a little bit of, all the other elements you can think of sprinkled in the stars, but no gas. Great question.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for that answer. And thank you, Linda, for that fantastic question. We have another question from Linda. So this goes back to food growth on the space station. So Diana, I think this one is for you. Linda is asking, did you say alfalfa sprouts? For space travel to Mars in the future, would this be a good choice to grow? Or what do you think would be better? Diana, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So yes, alfalfa is the next one to go. Again, these are trials. We are trying to figure out what's going to be able to grow efficiently and also sustain itself in space, especially to be able to feed astronauts and civilian nauts who are traveling to the gateway. So will it be the answer? We don't know yet. This is all part of the research and investigation that's going on. There are many plants actually that are successfully grown on the International Space Station right now. So lettuce is awesome, tomatoes, chili peppers, because astronauts have no taste buds when they are in space. So chili peppers are the answer to it. Hot sauce, all right, good old Jamaican hot sauce is one of the things that can be used to give a taste to the astronauts. So all of that to say that we don't know the answer yet. Maybe you do. It's important to think about what plants could be suggested for space investigation. It just doesn't have to be what we're trying and what other groups are trying, because there are many groups trying to grow plants right now out there. I think that soil viability is going to be an issue. Hydroponics, we know we can work with and all of that. Water is going to be an issue. So I would say to the person that's asking the question, we don't have all the answers right now, but you can be part of finding the answers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that answer. That is all the questions we have in the Q&A box. Feel free to ask more questions as we still have, I think, a little bit of time. But yeah, I also know a fair amount about growing food in space if you want to discuss it further. But thank you, Linda, for those questions. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the box.
All right, well, there don't seem to be any more questions so far, so I think this will be a good place to wrap up the event. I would like to thank all of our speakers once again for coming and showing us all of this amazing research and work in space education. It was truly really inspiring. I don't know if you've looked at the chat, but everyone seems to agree. So, so thank you very much for coming, and thank everyone who's watching for attending. And I hope that this inspires everyone to some extent to do something great. So that is where we will end off today. I hope you all have a very nice day.
Thank you to you.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. So great to be in the same space with people of color who are doing incredible things. Bless you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Diana. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I will be checking into your programs. If anybody wants to know about Magnitude.io, please check it online. Let's get Canada involved.